In this video, I'm going to give you an introduction to creating units using Forge. I have the tutorial single shooter scenario open, and it's my copy of it. So we're going to zoom in here a little bit on the scenario. And the most common way to create a new unit is to use unit patterns. So to access the unit patterns, I just right-click somewhere on the screen and I select New Unit. So that opens up the new Create New Units window. And I get to choose the type of unit or set of units that I want to create by looking at the available patterns. So this simple scenario looks like 8 different patterns. So as I click on the pattern, it gives me a description of the type of unit or units that are going to be created by this particular pattern. These patterns are not hard-coded into Forge. In fact, they're not defined in software at all, either in Forge or in the plugins. These are part of the scenario data. So you can go in and edit these patterns and add as many as you want and make them do whatever you want them to do. And other people who build scenarios can also do the same thing. If somebody has done that and they have them available for you to use, then they are, hands down, the most convenient way to create a unit. So you can click down through the patterns and just read about them and see if these are the units that you would like to create. It's important to understand that it's very unlikely that the patterns in a scenario will define every possible combination of unit or every possible type of unit that could be created with the scenario data that you have. Even a fixed set of models, platform models and sensor models and cognition models, etc., can be used to define any number of types of units and any number of types of scenarios. So the patterns will always represent just a subset of the types of units that could get created with the models that you have loaded. Having said that, we can pick on one of these, and we already have a red truck. So I'm going to pick on another red truck, which is the same kind of unit that I have, and I'll hit next. And then it's going to ask me for a name. I always have to specify a name, so I'm going to call this Red Truck 2. And then it lets me pick which data set I want it to be added to. Now, I only have one data set loaded in this scenario. It's the data set that contains these 2 units. And that data set is owned by the Flames example user. So I don't have permission to add a unit to that data set, which is why the only choice I have here is to create a new data set. So a new data set that I own will get created when I create this unit. If I had a data set already that I owned, it would list that one. And if I have multiple ones, it would let me pick the one that I want. Now the next is the location. If I did this by right-clicking on the map, it will show me a little symbol here, and that coordinate will be listed in this field already, and I can take this and drag it around if I want. When a user defines a pattern, there are usually certain inputs that are required for the pattern, and in addition to the name and the initial location, there are any number of other inputs that can be defined. This particular input is necessary to define just one waypoint, and that's the only additional input that I need. So I can click one of these buttons up here, and you can try that. I can right-click, and you can try looking at that. I'm just going to double-click. When double-click executes the operation that is the first item listed when I right-click and get a context menu. So this will allow me to pick the value from the screen. So I'll click that over there, and after it's there, I can move it around. And when the values are all black and it has values that it's happy with, you can hit Finish, and it would create the other unit. So this particular scenario, we've seen this before. This blue shooter shoots at targets, and I believe he will shoot at more than one target. So we'll just let it run here while I'm talking. That's one way to create a unit, is to pick a pattern. And so yes, it automatically looks for targets, and it automatically found that one and it shot that one. So that's the way to create units using patterns. And again, that is the easiest way. but you might not always have a pattern for every type of unit that you want to create. So another way to create a unit is to take a unit that you already have created and just copy it. So I can pick on one of the units in my scenario. I'll call this Red Truck 2. Pick on Red Truck 2 and I'll name it 3, and I just hit accept. And that automatically makes an exact duplicate of the unit. And so now I've got another copy of it. So that is also a way to create units. In another video, a more advanced video, we'll talk about how to create units completely from scratch. And that will involve going to the script of the unit and editing the script. But that's a little bit more advanced operation, and so we're not going to cover that right now. Before we finish, I just want to show you that each of these units is composed with a bunch of different models. In Flames, a unit is an empty shell, and it has no behavior whatsoever. The only thing that you can do for a unit, if you don't attach models to it, is just give it a name. So for example, let me just put in here empty unit. I'll go to its script, and I'll delete everything from the script, and I'll hit accept. So here's an empty unit, but it has no models attached to it. I cannot give it any commands. It is just an empty shell. All of the behavior of the unit is specified by the models that are attached to it. So I can see the models by looking at the composition tab. So this unit has 8 different models attached to it. The red truck, all these trucks that I created, they just have 2. How to compose a unit, how to put models on a unit is a subject of a different set of videos. That's a more advanced topic. Most of the time when you're working with a scenario, you're working with units for which the composition has already been determined, either by creating them from the Create New Units window or by just copying existing ones. But more advanced users will be building units from scratch and be putting their own models that they developed and specifying the composition. So that's all there is to it. Creating units is a very easy thing to do in Flames, and it's very easy to edit them, and that's the subject of another video where we talk about editing units. Almost all the work that you do with Forge will be done from this single unit window here, the Units window. So that concludes the video on how to create units. I hope you learned something from it. Thanks for watching, and thanks for using Flames.